Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Department of Toxic Substances Control, Exide Public Hybrid Meeting. Our meeting this evening is scheduled from 6 to 8 p.m. Please note that all our meeting materials are available in English and Spanish and are accessible at dtsc.ca.gov/Exide. Additionally, we would like to announce that audio interpretation devices are available for anyone who would like to listen to tonight's meeting in Spanish. Devices are available for checkout near the entrance. Now, we would like to start the evening by thanking New Start Housing Corporation for allowing DTSC to use the space for tonight's meeting. We would also like to thank the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health for providing free blood testing this evening. If you would like to get free blood tests, please visit their table located at the lobby. We want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the elected officials and government agencies who represent the Exide community and our partners on the Exide Cleanup Project. If you would like to stand up, please, so we can highlight and thank you for your attendance this evening. And lastly, we want to introduce our panelists. Starting from the far right, we have Stephen Hariri, Branch Chief at DTSC, Maribeth Tahar, Assistant Deputy Director, SMRP at DTSC, Craig Scholler, Chief Deputy Director, Elizabeth Van Berg, SMRP Deputy Director, Edwin Chip Polonelli, Assistant Deputy Director for the United States EPA, Region 9, and Dr. James Wells, Contract Manager for LEA Environmental Incorporated. Thank you. My name is Pedro Vasquez. I'm the Public Engagement Manager for Exide South with the Department of Toxic Substances Control. I will pass it to my colleague so he can introduce himself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Freddie Avellaneda, Public Participation Specialist with the Exide Residential Cleanup Project.
Thank you, Freddie. Freddie and I will be your facilitators for this evening. To community members joining us online, welcome. And please note that you should now be able to see tonight's PowerPoint presentation on your screen.
Now we would like to go over our meeting guidelines with you. We want you to be aware that by participating in this meeting, you understand that this meeting is being recorded. You may be muted for background noise if you're participating online. The chat feature will be used for DTSC informational purposes. Please pay close attention to the chat to receive important DTSC information, contact information, and updates. We will allow you additional time after the public meeting to obtain information posted in the chat. We ask that you limit your comments to allow everyone the opportunity to participate in person and online during this meeting. This Exide Public Hybrid Meeting will focus on sharing updates and foster a discussion with members of the Exide project community. We will invite feedback and answer questions on the residential cleanup, the Exide facility, and other activities. You can also contact us with Exide questions by calling our hotline number at 844-225-3887, or you can email us at exide@dtsc.ca.gov. For those participating virtually or by phone, to support language and captions this evening, simultaneous Spanish audio interpretation is available for this meeting. Click the interpretation icon that looks like a globe at the bottom of your screen and select the language. It is important for everyone in this meeting to select the language, either English or Spanish. For Spanish-only audio by phone, please call 877-980-8432 and enter participant code 741502, pound. Presentation slides are available in Spanish at dtsc.ca.gov/Exide. Automated closed captions have been turned on for this meeting. You can turn them off by clicking the CC icon at the bottom of your screen or moving the captions box. Please note that these captions are provided for convenience only and are not the official transcript of this meeting.
Thank you, Freddie. Tonight's hybrid public meeting is being presented to you by the California Environmental Protection Agency and Department of Toxic Substances Control, also known as DTSC. Our mission is to protect California's people, communities, and environment from toxic substances, to enhance economic vitality by restoring contaminated land, and compel manufacturers to make safer consumer products. For our agenda this evening, we will begin with welcoming remarks from Craig Scholler, Chief Deputy Director with the Department of Toxic Substances Control. Then Stephen Hariri, Exide Cleanup Branch Chief with DTSC, will provide updates on the Exide residential cleanup, parkways, and sampling. Dr. Jim Wells, Contract Manager with LEA Environmental Incorporated, will provide third-party monitor updates. And finally, our final presentation this evening will be from Edwin Chip Polinelli, Assistant Director of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, Region 9, on Exide's National Priorities List. Lastly, Chief Deputy Director Craig Scholler will deliver closing remarks to conclude our meeting this evening.
Now we would like to welcome and introduce Craig Scholler, Chief Deputy Director with the Department of Toxic Substances Control, to provide welcoming remarks. If you like that.
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to open up by saying thank you for everyone for attending. These public meetings have been of great value to the department, not only for us to be able to share updates, but receive feedback from the community. I also want to thank members of the working group who we've been meeting with to gain feedback, which has been incredibly valuable for us to improve the project as it moves forward. Also, the elected officials at every level, state, local, and federal government, who have pushed us to continue this good work to forward. Also, our labor partners who have also been critical in us getting, I believe the number is 18 new work program graduates into the parkway cleanup, which has been critical for us and a huge priority. So thank you all for all of that. Looking forward to another great meeting and dialogue here tonight. And I will turn it back over to the team. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dion Falk. I am the Manager, Statewide Division Chief for the Office of Environmental Equity, and we do community outreach and engagement for the Exide project, my team. And I have some sad news tonight. So have a bit of news that I wanted to share with you. DTSC would like to acknowledge the passing of Juana Beatriz Gutierrez. She was the mother of 9 children, including our very own DTSC team member who works for OEE, Elsa Lopez, and she was the grandmother of our community leader, Mark Lopez, the co-chair of our Exide E-Tag. Ms. Gutierrez emerged as an iconic community leader, co-founding Las Madres de Esta de Los Angeles, or Mothers of East Los Angeles. This group successfully waged fights against the construction of a prison in Boyle Heights and prevented the construction of toxic waste, incinerators, a dump and chemical treatment plant, and a hot oil pipeline in their neighborhoods. Their efforts proved successful by wielding Black and Brown communities together in unity to defend both communities as one united front. So tonight, The Department of Toxic Substances Control would like to honor the passing of Juana Beatriz Gutierrez with a moment of silence. Please pause. Thank you. Back to my team.
Thanks, Dion. Now we would like to introduce Mr. Stephen Hariri, Exide Cleanup Branch Chief with DTSC, who will provide us updates on the Exide residential cleanup, parkways, and sampling.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Stephen Hariri, Branch Chief for the Exide Residential Project from the California Department of Toxic Substances Control. We're here tonight to provide an update on the Exide residential cleanup and milestones, as well as the parkways. As a recap, this map presents the preliminary investigation area where our cleanup efforts are active. The preliminary investigation area includes the 7 jurisdictions outlined. The area includes the cities of Commerce, Los Angeles, Maywood, Bell, Huntington Park, Vernon, and an unincorporated area in the county of Los Angeles. This graph shows the progress of our cleanup efforts from May 2018 through April 25th, 2025. The solid green line shows our steady progress to date, the number of properties cleaned up. And the orange dotted line shows our projected numbers of parcels to be cleaned up. In May and June 2020, cleanup was slowed due to COVID-19 and subsequently due to excessive smoke in the valley from nearby wildfires. In October 2023, the cleanup was halted and resumed in February 2024 as a new contractor was hired. In January 2025, the cleanup was slowed due to excessive smoke in the valley from nearby wildfires. This slide presents the residential cleanup progress. The preliminary investigation area includes approximately 10,000 sensitive land use parcels. These parcels are comprised of single and multifamily residential properties, schools, parks, daycares, and childcare facilities. As of April 25th, a total of 5,824 properties have been cleaned up with 20 crews in the field. 139 schools, parks, and daycares cleaned up. 9,969 parcels or decision units have been sampled. And a remaining 589 parcels not sampled because homeowners have not provided access. DTSC has completed the cleanup of a total of 5,824 properties out of the mandated 5,940 properties for this phase of prioritization. We anticipate completing this goal by June of this year. Despite a 44% inflation accumulated since April of the budget, approval of the budget in July 2021, DTSC, via continuous process improvements, generated $10 million in savings that was encumbered in the existing cleanup contract. This allowed DTSC to lower the priority threshold initially set at 200 parts per million to 190 parts per million and extend the cleanup operations in the field to the end of 2025. DTSC is committing all the existing funding to complete the cleanup of about 6,000 properties. While anticipating the response to our request for the national priority listing, DTSC will continue exploring all possible options for additional funding. We would like to reassure the field workforce that DTSC has made all efforts to continue to work in the field until the end of the year. This chart presents the anticipated workforce projection for the residential and parkways cleanup projects denoted in green and yellow respectively. We started cleanup during February 2024 for the residential cleanup project denoted in green, and have maintained 20 crews in the field with an increase to 25 crews starting in September of 2024. The parkways were started in November of last year, denoted in yellow. We have adjusted back to 20 crews in the field for the residential cleanup as of February of this year, denoted by the first black dotted line, and the residential crews were transferred to work on the parkways. Similarly, the residential cleanup crews and pace will be scaled back gradually between May and June with additional crew transfers to the parkways as denoted by the second black dotted line. This effort will maintain an average total number of 30 crews on both projects and preserve worker employment until the end of this year. Lastly, we have been tracking our contractors' compliance with the project labor agreement, and the reported actuals percentages are currently exceeding the hiring goals established in the project labor agreement. We'll now discuss the verification and retrospective sampling programs. The main objective of both sampling programs are as follows. Was the cleanup conducted according to the cleanup plan? Did the import clean soil used for backfill meet the requirements of the cleanup plan? Are the sampling results reproducible? And did the cleanup meet the objectives of the cleanup plan? This slide presents all the properties available for consideration, denoted by different colors for work conducted during different phases and contractors. The verification sampling program includes approximately 1,400 properties, comprising of 350 previously cleaned up properties by NEC in the last amendment, and around 1,050 currently by Parsons. The sampling proposes a similar protocol to that of the initial sampling conducted at the sites to provide an apples to apples comparison. The retrospective sampling properties selected were determined statistically and or randomly from the pool of remaining properties cleaned up previously by all contractors, exclusive of those from the verification sampling. The sampling proposes a similar protocol to that of the initial sampling conducted at the sites for an apples to apples comparison. Lastly, at the request of the Exide Technology Advisory Group Technical Advisor, 4 properties, 2 initial sampling and 2 cleanup properties will be selected for additional reproducibility sampling, respectively. We'll now discuss the status of the parkways. The cleanup of the parkways is on a sub-block basis with crews carpooling to work destinations to alleviate impacts to parking. We are streamlining permits and coordinating with jurisdictions regarding parking, maintenance work, and schedules by leveraging street sweeping and trash pickup days. Each jurisdiction has their own specific coordinated schedule. Notices are posted at properties on each side of the street within the line of sight, a minimum of 72 hours prior to work starting on a block or street. A tailored public outreach effort has been implemented for the parkways cleanup. Door hangers and woke notices are posted at a minimum of 72 hours for the impacted community members to alert them of the upcoming cleanup in the area. Also, a Parkways interactive map coordinated with each city provides the anticipated schedule and status for the cleanup. Community members can always call the Exide hotline or reach out online via the Exide Cleanup Feedback Management System to ask questions, report issues, or leave comments relating to the Exide cleanup effort. We have a total of 1,225 subblocks to clean up for the parkways. We have cleaned up 102 out of the 796 subblocks in the north and 123 out of the 429 subblocks in the south of the preliminary investigation area. The parkways cleanup includes the excavation of contaminated soil and backfill with clean certified fill. The backfill soil is carefully compacted to prevent damage to utility lines or jurisdiction sidewalks, curbs, streets, or trees, with topsoil added at the end to allow for restoration material as required by the jurisdiction. Please note that the parkways do not exceed the cleanup level thresholds, will not be excavated, and will remain in their original condition. Based on the jurisdiction requirements and participation, restoration material may include in-kind replacement with sod for existing grass and or hydroseed for bare earth areas. Furthermore, DTS will work in cooperation with the cities to promote the urban forest management plan effort currently underway. Notice is provided to the properties within a week or so prior to application of sod or hydroseed for the parkways. The responsibility for the maintenance and care of landscaping in the parkway rests with the jurisdiction and the respective property owner. The hydroseed application, as shown in the picture, will result in grass if watered and maintained as recommended. DTSC would like to thank all the community members for their continued support, attendance, and participation tonight. As always, we would like to thank all the residents that have signed up for the cleanup and welcomed us to their homes. Likewise, we would like to thank the same residents who have been very gracious, patient, and understanding regarding the cleanup of the parkways located directly outside their homes. We're also very grateful to all the field workers who continue to keep this project going every day. For those field workers who are attending this meeting tonight, please extend our sincere gratitude and thanks to your colleagues as well. Lastly, we thank you all for your time and attention during this presentation. If you have any questions, please contact me directly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. Now we will move on to our clarifying questions and comments section. Please remember that you will be given 2 minutes to allow everyone an opportunity to speak. There are various ways that you can make a comment or ask a question this evening. In person, by raising your hand, and when chosen, one of our staff members will come out with and bring you the microphone for you to speak for up to 2 minutes. If you're participating on Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. You will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn to speak. If you are on your phone, you can press *9 to join the phone queue. We will read the last 3 digits of your phone number, and you can then press *6 to unmute your line. If you called in on our Spanish bridge line and would like to ask a question, please notify the Spanish translator. Our Spanish translators are available to translate your questions and comments. And lastly, you can complete a Q&A card and submit it to any DTSC staff member with a name badge. Now we will be transitioning to the clarifying questions and comments period. First, we will start with questions or comments from our in-person attendees. Please raise your hand and someone will come to you with the microphone. Any questions? Here's one. Josh.
Hi, I had a question, I believe probably regarding, you had mentioned that there were possible residents that didn't allow for the testing. I believe the property that I'm at might be one of those. Unfortunately, I didn't realize until late in the process that I purchased the home in Commerce. that doesn't have the test available online. It does have a rating, which is below the legal minimum, but it doesn't have a report like the neighboring properties do. And so also it seems to be a little bit of an anomaly, like on one side of me, the reading is higher, and then the other side of me, it's also higher, and mine's is lower. So I'm not sure if I could get my property tested. And you know, one, because there's not a test, and two, because it seems to be anomalous. And so, yeah, that's important to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of situations where people actually were tested and came a little bit lower than the neighbors. The lead, and like any other contaminant, is different. Imagine if you did had at some point the lead spread at the surface and someone tilled the soil. So it end up being mixed, and you may see levels are a little lower on your property versus the property next door. So we don't have that information because over decades, people use their properties differently. However, if you feel that your property has been sampled and you want to have access to the report, right now we have uploaded over 9,100 initial reports on our website. They're all available. If you can't find it, we're more than happy to help you with that.
Josh.
Purchase because, well, I'm sorry, had to go forward with the purchase because I didn't find out those disclosures until close to the end of the process, and I didn't want to get the lawyers involved at that point for various reasons. But there are some health concerns in the household as well. But I had heard a reply from the DTSC, that they'll try to get the report, but I don't even know if one exists at this point.
It certainly exists. If the property has been sampled, we're more than happy to
Don't
help
know
you.
if it has been, that's the issue.
Yeah, we are going to help you today. We're going to check your case today. There are people in the room that will reach out to you and see what the property address is. And we're more than willing to help you today.
Very much appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything you would like to add, Stephen? Okay. Thank you. Anybody else that has a question in person, please raise your hand. Josh, yeah, person right here, or sorry, Jordan. Thank you. Go ahead, Amanda.
Hi, you mentioned that some property owners have not provided access for cleanup. What are some of the reasons people are giving for that?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You mentioned, Stephen, that some property owners have not provided access for cleanup. What are some of the reasons you're hearing for that?
So we have different reasons why people actually are not signing access agreement. But before I go through the reasons, can you hear me now? Before I go through the reasons, I want to tell you that we have sampled over, I think, close to 9,800 properties at this point. So that's a large number. We do have a list of people who have been reluctant, and then after, when we provided explanation, they change our mind. But the reasons are always different. You may have someone telling you, for instance, I like my landscaping and I don't want you to touch it. Or some people would tell you, I don't want a government on my property. So we have a range of reasons. But no matter what, we're spending a lot of time. We're not giving up. We're spending a lot of time explaining how important this cleanup is for this community and how important it is for each property to be clean so it doesn't impact the next door property.
I have one more question. Is that okay? Does DTSC or the state of California currently have enough funding to complete its cleanup goals?
The current funding we have should have carried us all the way to 5,940 properties. That's what Stephen has shared. But we did generate a lot of saving, and that saving has been re-injected. So the current work should bring us close to 6,000 properties. And we have money to continue all the way to December of this year.
Thank you. Jordan, we have another question up front. Can you please stand though, please, ma'am? Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I have two questions. The first one, you mentioned that you are doing everything that you can do to inform the residents as to the information that is going on. What are the current like outreach efforts that you are doing? If you can like give examples.
It's a long list. We do reach out to the people over the phone. There are emails. We send every 3 months a notice via mail. And I can tell you that right now it's monthly, not every 3 months. The notice is via mail. We have a crew that's knocking at doors, and I can tell you that we're tracking every single properties. We meet internally every week, so I can't remember the numbers. I know that some properties we have tried over 25 times knocking at the door. And sometimes you get a no, sometimes you get, it's not time, come back later. Obviously, these are not our properties, we're guests, and we try to work with the people depending on their sometimes personal conditions. I forget to add to the person who asked before, some of the reason would be someone is sick at home or someone's in the hospital, come back in a month or two. So we see every kind of responses.
Okay, and those folks that are going like canvassing, knocking on the door, well, not canvassing, but knocking on the doors, are they like folks from your team or are they like someone external?
It's DTSC and sometimes DTSC contractor.
For sure. My second question was regarding the budget. I'm not sure if it's going to be addressed later in the presentation, but I was curious what the makeup of your budget is, like where is most of that money coming from, whether it's like federal or if it's local or like how does that look like?
Well, we didn't plan to talk about it, but it's fine. For the current budget we have, it's all state budget. And we did share that, I think, in the previous presentation. 100% of the funding that we're spending on residential is coming from the state. So I'm not able to give you the detailed number right now, but maybe that's going to be for the next presentation.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions? Jordan, we have one more. Can you please stand, ma'am? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I can hold it. Sorry, I have a foot injury. Hi, everybody. My name is Rosemary. I'm one of the Southeast LA youth organizers with Communities for a Better Environment. Seen some familiar faces. Hey, Edwin. We'll have a meeting soon. I wanted to ask, I know Roberto does our community organizing and is lead on this campaign, loops us in, right, at CBE. I did want to ask, however, today I saw that it was released, right, some of the budgeting at the federal level. Some members at the state level, some of our members have asked about that. I think they broke down a few of those numbers. And one of the comments that I had saw was that this funding, while it's not technically dedicated to like this site, right? So I'm just a little more curious. I know you don't have maybe the answer now, but I definitely would like to see more details on the budget. If not at a next meeting, maybe some type of arranged like meeting we can have, just because members have been having a lot of questions. A lot of youth members could not come today, but they're definitely waiting for us to post like on Instagram. We do give them links, right, to DTSC websites and things like that, but it's a lot of hyperlinks y'all have. You go to one to go to 10 more, so it can get a little overwhelming. So we try our best to kind of summarize what are the major takeaways. And in general, we've been having conversations about lead in Southeast Los Angeles, right? Not just for this campaign, but also our U-Haul and surrounding sites, the Engle property. So this summer, thank you for the reminder. This summer, we are having an Ahead of the Lead leadership training program where we do plan to talk more about these campaigns, including Exide and some of the action that DTSC is taking. So I definitely want to be up to date and look forward to chatting and getting some of those updates. Thank you.
Anybody like to provide any updates?
Okay. So what was released today was the governor's May revision for the budget. And there is an item in there associated with Exide. Essentially, we have had money appropriated to the project in previous budgets. Anytime you get an appropriation from the state, there is a deadline by which you have to encumber that funding. That's money that we've been holding on to for the facility. And since we still are waiting for a listing and the kind of further decisions on the facility. We just needed to reappropriate that money to last us longer so we could keep it within the project and use it when necessary.
Thank you. Okay, guys, thank you for those questions. We'll come back to you. Now we will read from the submitted Q&A cards. Valisa, do we have any Q&A cards from our attendees tonight? From Mr. Steven, Josh?
No, we have no Q&A cards.
Thank you, Valisa. We will now go to the virtual portion of tonight's meeting. Valisa, do we have any online attendees with questions or comments?
Yes, we will go to Jane Williams. Jane Williams, can you please unmute your line and ask your question?
Hi, can you hear me? This is not Jane Williams.
Yes. Yes, this is Jane Williams. Thank you very much for everyone who attended this event tonight. It's great to see everybody, even though I'm not there in person. My question is, what can DTSC do to enhance and expand its capacity to do the testing, the many hundreds and thousands of new tests that we're going to do by expanding its lab capacity? And also, what are we doing to be able to have the state to have its own ability to fingerprint the lead that it's finding in soils?
I'm sorry, Jane, thanks for the questions. Could you repeat your first question? I think it was regarding lab capacity. You broke up a little bit there.
Right. So we have literally like tens of thousands of lead in soil sampling that we need to still take, both for confirmatory sampling and then for sampling outside the 1.7 mile radius. What can the state do to expand its lab capacity to do some of that, to do that sampling? And secondly, what are we doing to expand the lab capacity of the state so it can fingerprint the lead that we're finding?
Thank you, Jane. So for the first part of the question, currently the labs that we have can accommodate what we need. You have been part of the working group meetings, and you have heard that we're doing the verification sampling. That's going at the rate of about, what is it, like 20 properties a week. So, and the labs that we have currently can accommodate that workload. That's not an issue. The fingerprinting is another story. As you know, we have first to determine what type of fingerprinting and what method could be validated before we move forward with finding the appropriate labs. There are different methods, as you know, going from the isotopic analysis to the microscopic analysis to the carbon, not the metal fractioning. So all these methods are being evaluated under a separate contract. When we have determined which method works best, we're happy to get back to the group, especially the ETAC group, share our findings, and then we can determine which lab can carry that work.
Thank you. Any other questions, Valisa?
Yes, we will go to Tiff Sanchez. Tiff, can you unmute your line and ask your question?
Thank you. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Tiff Sanchez. I'm a member at East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice. I'm also the Exide youth organizer. I work with schools such as Mendez, Garfield, and Roosevelt High School students. My question is for DTSC, since the parts per billion were lowered from the 200s to the 190s levels. Is there a way that you all are going to be retesting, or how are the people that now qualify to have the cleanup prioritized? Are they being contacted? And then my second question is that in 2022, one of the largest sites of the Exide cleanup happened at Wyvernwood. It is a large community or complex of apartment complexes. It's the equivalent to like about a 300 house cleanup, just to give people listening an idea. And it's located in Boyle Heights, right on the edge of where Boyle Heights turns into Vernon. The grass was removed and the soil was remediated. There was some damage done to sidewalks because of the large construction equipment, such as like cracked sidewalks and parking lots. And when the grass was removed, there was the I think it's called aquaseed spray that was put down on the grass. This apartment complex was completely covered in grass, and we are, about 2.5 years later that the grass still isn't growing. And I really want to emphasize what that does to a youth member or a family that lives there, knows about the lead contamination and cleanup, and seeing their home basically transformed into basically dirt. And I know that you say like there's instructions for like the property management to upkeep and water and like things like that, but what happens when it doesn't? And I just want to emphasize the ramifications of mental health and how that makes members feel. Residents feel like when they live there and they see the transformation from, nice grass to just, dusty dirt when they have, gatherings and things like that. It really does affect mental health. And we've had students that were seniors when this happened, and now they're in their second and third year of university. And when they come home, they're reminded that, the cleanup was done, but the aftermath is still being felt. And how do we remediate that loss of like the feeling of home?
Thank you, Tiffany. Would anyone like to take a shot at that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the questions. There are two parts. The first one is regarding the 190 ppm. I want to go back to what Stephen said earlier. Our objective initially was to complete 5,940 properties. And when we set that goal originally, that corresponded to a 200 parts per million cleanup. Because we have generated saving and we did better than expected, we are now going to complete about 6,000 properties. So more properties than originally thought. We had to lower that threshold from 200 to 190. So that's the first part of the question. Any property exceeding 190 is qualified for a cleanup. The second part is regarding Winewood Woods. I agree. That was probably one of the biggest challenge we had. It's a property that covers about 8 city blocks, so it's quite big. We have stayed in that property about a year after the cleanup. And part of the work we have done, the state has done, outside any norm, I should say, is make sure that that grass grows. We have hydroseeded the entire property. We have watered the entire property, and the contractor was there almost every day to inspect it. And we walked away after we ensured that the grass has grown. So the rest of the responsibility, per the agreement we had with the owner of the property, is that they would take over all the operations and maintenance of that grass. That is watering it, that is cutting it, that is ensuring that it looks decent. I am not in the position to answer as to what happened after. This is probably a question that should be directed to the owner of Winewood Wood. But we have done our very best to make sure that the property is left in pristine condition. Mind you, we have spent even extra money to bring that property in compliance with the water discharge, because that property was not compliant to begin with. We made sure that they're in compliance with the discharge when it rains.
Thank you, Mehdi. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mehdi. Are there any other questions, Valisa, online?
Yes, we have Rafael Yanez. Please unmute your line and ask your question.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Mr. Rafael.
Hi, Mehdi. Hello, Dion. In any case, I'm a resident of the East LA Boyle Heights area, and I had a question in regards to the Exide facility itself. I've been out of the loop for a while, and I'm just coming back. I'm trying to understand what's the existing subsurface at the Exide plant. I heard that there was some appropriate, or at least the budget line item in the current budget for the Exide facility itself. What is the current condition of the site? Did the subsurface contaminated soil be removed to a certain depth? I understand that there were existing testing wells that were on site at a depth of, I think, 40. No, actually, I saw the soils sampling that was done by the various testers to a depth of 110 feet. There were monitoring wells, I think, at a depth of 40 to 60 feet in some areas. What were the status of that well? And then what is the proposed, because I know there was a basement within the old building that was there at a depth of approximately 15 to 20 feet below finished grade. What's the proposed depth that the contaminated soil is going to be removed in order to prevent it from getting into, or at least continuing to leach into the groundwater table there? And then the second question, I must have blinked and missed your Superfund status update. So if you want to tackle that first and then get to the subsurface of the Exide battery plant, that would be great. Thank you.
Rafael.
Welcome back, Rafael. I haven't heard your voice for quite some time. So for the facility, in 2021, we have received a budget of 132 million. And there are a few objectives. Well, the first step that we wanted to complete is make sure that we complete the closure of the facility. And the second objective would be to close the Title V permit. Overall, the objective at the first phase would be to bring the site to what we call a safe and stable condition. And we're very close. Since we have left, Rafael, I can reassure you, almost all the structures that were on site were successfully demolished. So right now, the only existing structure is a water treatment system. Everything else has been taken down under a full enclosure unit as requested by AQMD. And we're probably just weeks away from the closure. So that's also going to be announced when we have it. It's going to be made public. As far as the rest, we have recently conducted an investigation. That's part of us preparing the remedial investigation report that will be made available to the public on EnviroStore. And let's not forget that while we're conducting all these activities, we have also requested that the facility be listed by US EPA as a Superfund. So we're working with US EPA as we're continuing to conduct the investigation that we started, I think, a few months back. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Mehdi. Now we will move on to
Hold on one second.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I do think we had a few hands up earlier that we missed.
Okay, we'll take one more question, you guys. One more question, Josh. Can you please raise your hand, ma'am, and please stand? No, in front. She raised her hand first. With the white shirt. Raise your hand, ma'am. Please raise your hand. The other one. Yeah.
Sí, creo, primero que nada necesito traducción.
Ok, espérame.
Sí, muy buenas tardes, miembros de ITAC. Mi nombre es Mirna Borges. Yo soy miembro de CBE y vivo en la ciudad de Mayville desde hace 21 años.
Le puede dar el micrófono. Gracias.
Good afternoon, ETAG members. My name is Mirna Borges. I am a member of CBE and I have lived in the city of Maywood for 21 years.
El informe de inspección del sitio de Exide mostró altos niveles de TCE y que podrían estar afectando el agua potable en esta zona.
The Exide site inspection report showed high levels of TCE that could be affecting the drinking water in this area.
¿Se han realizado pruebas de TCE? Mi pregunta es esta. ¿Se han realizado pruebas de TCE u otros compuestos volátiles orgánicos conocidos como VOC en viviendas o distritos de agua cerca de las antiguas instalaciones de Exide?
So my question is, has testing for TCE or other volatile organic compounds known as VOCs been conducted in homes or water districts near the former Exide facility?
Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you for the question. For the VOCs, that was part of the investigation at the facility because they have used TCE in the past. We have a record that they've used TCE. Currently, groundwater is being monitored, and looking at the groundwater as well as the soil gas that has been monitored all along. I can tell you that we have determined the contours of that plume, at least as it originated from the facility itself. That doesn't say that we don't have other sources. I mean, immediately surrounding it, we have different sources that are also part of that monitoring, and we have delineated those plume each and every time. So we know how far they extend. From what we have seen so far, when you look at, if you go to EnviroStore and you look at the sites, you're going to realize that it's within that industrial area that's being affected, close to Exide.
Thank you. Okay, we have 2 more sessions for questions and answers, but we'll like to move forward, please, in order for us to be able to finish on time. Thanks. So thank you to everyone for your questions and comments. We will now transition back to the presentation.
All right, well, thank you again, everyone, for your questions and for your comments. We would like to now introduce and welcome Dr. Jim Wells, Contract Manager with LEA Environmental, who will be providing an update on the third-party monitor. Mr. Wells.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jim Wells. I'm the Contract Manager for the Exide Third-Party Monitor Program. I see some new faces and a lot of old faces. So it's nice to be here, and I appreciate being invited to speak tonight. Let's see. The Exide third-party monitors conduct unannounced, independent inspections of residential and parkway cleanup activities. This program is funded by DTSC, but is not directed by DTSC. So the third-party monitor program is a component of the quality control program for the Exide cleanup. In response to concerns over the years from ETAG, the technical advisory group, and the community, DTSC made a commitment to a bigger and, I think, better QA/QC program for the cleanup contract that began early last year. Our goal as a third-party monitor is to document contractor compliance with project operations plans and health and safety plans. And the whole idea is to encourage thorough and safe cleanups. So how does it work? Well, to ensure consistency, we have a team of inspectors that use electronic checklists to evaluate critical components of the operation plan and health and safety plans. We then report our findings on a weekly basis to DTSC, and DTSC in turn works with Parsons and the Parkway contractors to correct issues and seek ways to improve performance. So to date, we have conducted about 2,600 inspections. Most of these were at residential cleanup sites, but in keeping with Mr. Hariri's comments about the transition to parkway cleanups, we're now increasingly inspecting parkway cleanups. I do want to take a moment here to mention that this transition to parkway cleanups has had some challenges, probably for all parties involved, but including us, the third-party monitors. First of all, just the sheer number of active sites has increased. For example, over the next 2 weeks, there are 124 separate cleanups scheduled. Now that's fantastic, and it's a lot for our small team of inspectors to deal with. Also, the parkway cleanups are kind of different from the residential cleanups, as I'm sure almost everybody here knows. They're constrained by limited space and frankly, limited time, which I think makes following every single aspect of the operation plans quite a bit more difficult. So for example, we are seeing some problems with dealing with irrigation systems, equipment decon, concurrent backfilling and excavation, soil compaction, and also setup of air monitors. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. So notwithstanding those concerns, I can report to you that we find that most inspection points are in compliance with the relevant plans. So let's take a look at a 1-month snapshot. The third-party monitoring team performed 187 inspections last month in April. So let me tell you a little bit about what we found. And I'll divide our findings into 3 categories. I'll talk about excavation and restoration. I'll talk about air monitoring issues, and I'll talk about health and safety. In terms of the excavation and restoration phases of work, I put together a list of the top 5 non-compliance observations. And what we found was occasional non-compliance for soil being tracked off-site, visible dust in the air, replacing clean soil in greater than 8-inch lifts that potentially affects compaction, house vents not being covered with plastic sheeting, and occasionally hardscapes such as driveways, sidewalks, not fully covered with protective plastic sheeting. So air monitoring, just as a little bit of background, air monitoring is performed principally to document compliance with AQMD, the Air Quality Management District requirements for dust at construction sites and also contaminated dust. So last month, the third-party monitors observed some non-compliance in entryway monitors, not functioning or being absent, perimeter air monitors, not functioning or being absent, PM10, that's the particulate size, entryway readings potentially exceeding limits. Health and safety. We do observe mostly good compliance with health and safety matters. We have observed last month cases of workers not washing hands when leaving the work site, no hand wash station being set up. not wearing eye protection, no obvious first aid kits at work sites. So those are the kinds of things that we're seeing. Now, how about trends? This is a graph that we put together that shows the number of non-compliance observations in those same three categories for each of 3 months that span the current phase of work. So we took a look at the non-compliance observations in April of last year, and then 6 months later in October, and then 6 months later in April of this year. Some months, as Mr. Hariri pointed out, some months there's more cleanups than in other months. So the absolute numbers can be maybe a little misleading, but if we normalize this information with a very simple test of how many non-compliance observations are we seeing per inspection, what we do see is a gradual trend of improvement. At the beginning, we were seeing an average of about 1.5 issues of noncompliance per inspection. And what you can see from this graph is that we are seeing a decline in the occurrence of these observations, such that in the most recent month, the average was about 3/4 of an issue, less than 1 issue on average with each inspection. So I'm going to wrap up here with a couple comments on 2 sort of big picture questions that we get asked quite frequently. In the environmental field, I would describe this first question, which is the cleanup process itself safe? Is the actual process safe for workers, for residents, for neighbors? We would describe that as being about acute exposure, kind of short-term but possibly intense exposure. And the second question is about long-term safety, what we might call chronic exposure, which is, are the yards safe after the excavation is completed? One of the questioners asked a similar question. Short-term safety. We have a lot of data about this. The air monitoring that I referred to earlier can be used to evaluate how much lead-bearing dust is getting kicked up that people might become exposed to. So far, we have not observed any exceedances of the AQMD dust standards. There have been, in terms of personal air monitoring, these are tests where a worker wears a monitor during the workday to evaluate the actual exposure. There have been something like 1,200 of these tests that have been done. There have also been about 1,200 doorway dust analyses where we'd measure not just the magnitude of dust, but also the lead content of that dust. So altogether, that's about 2,400 site-specific measurements of lead in the air. That's the principal exposure pathway that we're really concerned about during this phase of work. And 99% of those tests came up actually non-detect for lead. The lab didn't find detectable levels of lead in those samples at all. I think the bottom line is there is dust that's kicked up during these activities. The workers take great pains to minimize that, but there is dust that gets kicked up at these work sites. But the lead concentration in that dust generally is quite low. So that's really a positive takeaway from the findings. Long-term safety. Long-term safety is really answering or asking the question of after all is said and done, after the work is done, are the yards sufficiently clean? And in the state of California, that would mean that the average lead concentration should be less than 80 parts per million in these yards. We actually expect the average lead concentration in these yards to be a lot less than 80 parts per million because the excavations are being backfilled by clean soil that on average has a concentration. It does have some lead in it because lead is a naturally occurring compound, but the clean backfill that's brought onto these sites has a roughly average concentration of about 20 parts per million. So we actually expect the lead concentration in the cleaned up yards to be a lot less than 80. However, DTSC has not historically collected the kind of data that's needed to prove that. And so the verification sampling that Stephen discussed earlier today is a really important piece of the puzzle that will allow us to evaluate that question and hopefully validate that the lead concentrations in cleaned up homes are far less than 80. But I'm a data guy. I want to see the data. And I'd be happy to report back once we start getting some of that data, which should be available very soon. So I'll close by saying that this third-party monitor program is meant to be quality control aspect of the overall program, but it's also meant to be a resource for you and for DTSC and really for all of us. So if you have questions or if you have concerns, we really want to hear from you. I've posted here the contact information for myself and for my colleague Wade Allman, who is also an environmental geologist and is the project manager on this program. And as I said, we're really open to hearing from you anytime. And with that, I will say thank you and be happy to take questions.
Well, thank you, Dr. Wells. We will now be moving into our clarifying questions and comments section. Please remember that you will be given 2 minutes to allow everyone an opportunity to speak. There are various ways you can make a comment or ask a question this evening. In person by raising your hand, and when chosen, one of our staff members will come to you with a mic. If you're participating by Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. You will be invited to unmute your audio when it's your turn to speak. If you're on your phone, you can press *9 and you will join the phone queue. We will read the last 3 digits of your phone number and you can press *6 to unmute your line. If you called in on our Spanish bridge line and would like to ask a question, please notify the Spanish translator and our Spanish translators will be available to translate your questions or comments. All right, so now we'll transition into the clarifying questions and comments period. And I know we have a couple of questions on the line, so we'll go to the gentleman with his raised hand. Thank you.
Inglés y necesito comentar algo que pasó en mi propiedad. Okay, mi nombre es Héctor Majano, vivo en la ciudad de Maywood. Me hicieron la limpieza de la tierra, de los químicos de la tierra, pero dejaron la caída de agua para dentro de la propiedad y se me inundó la propiedad y lamentablemente esta noche yo me iba, o la siguiente noche me iba de vacaciones y tuve que hacer algo de emergencia, hablarle a personas que me ayudaran a sacar toda la tierra para poder salvar mi propiedad de la parte de atrás. Hablé con alguien de ustedes y me dijeron de que porque yo había sacado la grava de mi propiedad, no calificaba para que ellos pudieran reparar los daños, no daños en la casa, pero sí en la tierra, porque nunca había tenido ese problema de que el agua se fuera para dentro de la propiedad en vez de salir hacia la calle. Que cuando hicieron eso, yo les comenté, por favor, dejen que el agua salga a la calle, que no salga para el lado y atrás de la propiedad, porque para atrás no hay salida de agua.
Hello, my name is Nick Maham. I live in Maywood. I also had a soil cleanup in my property, but unfortunately, the way they lifted the soil, the water inside, so there was a accumulative of water in it. So I spoke with I didn't qualify for this cleanup because I was the one who removed the soil. So not to that way because the water was not have proper, wasn't going to be running out of the property properly. So the way the water stayed there in the property, it flooded my property, and they say it didn't qualify for cleanup because it was my fault.
If you keep, please keep the microphone there because it's not clear to us whether the property has been cleaned up or not.
La propiedad ya fue limpiada, pero cuando hicieron el trabajo, en vez de dejar que la caída de agua saliera hacia la calle, se fue hacia adentro y empezó a inundarse mi propiedad. Y en el caso tuve que hablar a un grupo de gente para que me sacara la grava de ahí y hacer nivel hacia la calle para que no siguiera inundando mi propiedad. Entonces, yo tenía que irme de vacaciones y por eso no pude hablar a la oficina de ustedes, pero después hablé con alguien de ustedes y me dijeron que no calificaba para ayudarme a reparar el nivel del agua porque yo había movido la grava.
¿Había movido qué? So yes, they did clean it up, but instead of allowing the water to flow out to the street, the water stayed in the property, so that's why it flooded. I went on vacation. When I came back, I called your office and they told me I didn't qualify because I didn't allow the flow of the water to exit.
Okay, so go ahead.
They cleaned his property. They didn't create the level so that the flow would go off his property. So now there's water retention at the property.
Yeah.
It was an emergency because he was about to go on vacation. And so he hired some folks to just try to deal with the water in an emergency way. And then when he came back from vacation, he reached out to DTSC to try to remedy the problem and was informed that because he had gotten a third party to move things around, that now DTSC wasn't responsible or couldn't come back and fix that.
Thank you, Mark. So it's a sloping issue. Here's, if we can get your address, please. We're going to revisit your property probably as early as this coming week. Someone will reach out to you, but we need your address, please.
All right. Well, thank you for the question and for the clarifications there. We got another hand up from the audience and we'll come to you with the mic shortly. Oh, we got one in the back and then we'll come right up here.
Yeah, sorry, I had my own comment as well. First off, thank you, Dion. I don't know where Dion is at, but I really appreciate your words and everyone's sentiment about the passing of my grandma. I think seeing Jim's report, like it's really thorough, it's all laid out. I do like recognize that over time, like things have gotten better. Like that is real from previous contractor to existing contractor, for sure. And in a lot of ways with the existing contractor, with some of the folks out on the crews, there's still a lot to be done because some people in some crews, especially operators, to be real, from what I'm hearing from folks, aren't responsive, aren't receptive. They're not receptive, so then they're not responsive. And it's not, in the past, we've talked about cutting corners and not doing the cleanup correctly, leaving lead in place, or creating issues of other pathways of exposure. But we're also dealing with health and safety issues of workers. And there is a complicated dynamic because there's multiple unions, right? And then there's the contractor and there's DTSC, or there's a subcontractor and then a contractor and DTSC. So I just want to make sure to like re-emphasize that for all the parties that are here, that these are things that we need to continue to work on, right? They're not necessarily going to be reflected in a report, especially when high-level data is being shared. But these are issues that are coming up at the work sites weekly, and we're seeing them and we're wanting them to be addressed because we've seen some good things. We've also seen some bad things and some backtracking. And of course, we're trying to work together to move this forward, right? So I just wanted to put that comment out there. I also wanted to address, because a couple of folks have hit me up to be like, wait, hold up, what about this? What about that? They said this, they said that. So I just want to make it clear that when DTSC says that homes over 190 are going to get cleaned up, that means those are the priority for the rest of this year. For those of you that have been coming to meetings, you know that at the last meeting, we were talking about 200. You know that last year, we're talking about 400. You know that 5 years ago, 8 years ago, we're talking about above 1,000, right? We're trying to get all the way down to 80. And so if you're hearing 190 and your home is under that, it doesn't mean that there is no cleanup for your home ever. It means that with the existing funding, your home isn't prioritized. And this is also important for workers to hear because a lot of times workers are thinking about job security and are like, there's always this panic on like, this contract is the end of it. We've seen the end of many contracts, right? And we're not done until the cleanup is done, right? From the community aspect, we've received confirmation from folks at DTSC at all levels that they're committed to this cleanup, including at our last meeting. And so those are things that we can expect that we also need to work for, right? And so seeing some elected officials show up tonight, or the staff of elected officials, is really appreciated because you all need to advocate for that as well, right? When we're thinking about the trajectory of where this cleanup is, that's really important. One last note, for homes that are under 190, there's also additional criteria that can get you reprioritized. So if you have children that live at the home or visit the home often that are below 5, that's a trigger. If there's a pregnant woman that lives at the house or visits the house often, that's a trigger. And I believe there's other triggers that maybe can be shared. So for those here and those hearing it, it doesn't mean that you're like, there is no like light at the end of the tunnel. Keep coming, keep being involved, keep being engaged, and the better you'll understand like the trajectory of this cleanup.
Thank you. Well, thank you for those comments. And we have time for one more in-person question. And I believe we have a gentleman here at the front.
The gentleman, I think, partially answered my question. I appreciate that. And sorry to hear about your grandmother. But yeah, Dr. Wells had mentioned 80 parts per million. Ms. Aguilar is working on substantiating my property at 158, something like that. So I was kind of concerned about the gap. And as I understood it, that there wasn't an intention to go below the that, I believe legal limit, but the gentleman answered that, so I appreciate that. And there are, I guess, some triggers in my case as well that I'll hopefully will be addressed. That was my original questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. We'll now be transitioning to the virtual portion of tonight's meeting. And so we'll transition to the Zoom line. Felisa, do we have any online attendees with questions or comments?
Yes, we have a question from Nicole Vera. Nicole, please unmute your line and ask your question.
Hi, can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Awesome. So my name's Nicole. I'm a CBE member and I have been leading work around Exide for a while. And my question pertains to something considering the hydro seed that a previous member also commented about. But after the cleanup, parkways are either being replaced with sod or hydro seed. And my concern comes about the sustainability and the effectiveness of these options. In many areas, especially in Maywood, I've seen these parkways that have been hydroseeded that look dry, patchy, and honestly, like sometimes even crumbly. And this happens even when the residents do follow directions. I do want to note that these lawns are not suited for the climate of Los Angeles and our water restrictions. Seeing as they do require more water than is realistic for long-term maintenance. And in other cases, I have noticed that hydroseed is being replaced with sod. My question is, it's a few questions. Was there a known issue with the hydroseed? And will all these hydroseeded parkways be replaced? And is DTSC doing anything to follow up on these sites where it hasn't successfully grown? And given this, are there any sustainable or drought-tolerant alternatives that DTSC is considering for future restoration of these parkways?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Please remember that the restoration of these particular parkways is done in coordination with the different jurisdiction. We don't have an unlimited budget. We have discussed with most of the city a replacement in kind. We have assessed many of these parkways that were bare soil, and we offered to the cities, rather than leaving these bare soil, we would hydroseed them. The question is there something wrong with the hydroseed? And the response is no. As long as you water it, you'll see grass, just like we have done at the beginning of Winewood and Hakla. But if you stop watering them, there would be no grass. That's valid for any home you have, even if you have to put the sod yourself. I'll take this opportunity to commend Mark Lopez, because last week we were in a meeting with one of the major cities in this jurisdiction. And he was fighting really hard to make sure that city plant trees. That's part of the restoration that cities do. We don't. And he was fighting to get more trees in that cities. And we just happened to be in that meeting. And we were trying to figure out how we can get a permit to quickly start the work of these parkways. So there's a lot to be done in the cities. We have approached each jurisdiction again. We've hoped that they would take this opportunity to make it a beautification project and plant something else than the grass, because we're also aware that water is not the best way to go here in California. At some point, it may be banned. And we landed for the hydroseed for two reasons. One is we want to make sure we're compliant with whatever code there is in the city. And two is we didn't want the bare soil to start going into the ravine, right? So it's that hydroseed keep the soil in place. It doesn't look good, but you keep it in place. We are starting a campaign here, and Dion and her team will be going around with some panels indicating that all it takes for that hydroseed is to be watered. So if there is abundance of water, and if the neighbors want those parkways to be green in front of their homes, we would recommend a certain frequency of watering. I hope that responds to the question.
Great. Thank you for that. We're going to be transitioning to our Spanish Bridge line. So Eric, are there any questions on the Spanish Bridge line? Doesn't look like we have any. So thank you again for those questions and comments. We do have another round of questions and comments. So if you do have one, please, again, we'll come back to you shortly. We're going to now transition right back into our presentations. With that being said, we would like to introduce Mr. Edwin Polinelli, Assistant Director for the US EPA Region 9, Southern California Field Office, will provide an update on Exide Superfund status. Mr. Polinelli?
Good afternoon. I'm Chip Polinelli. I'm the Assistant Director for EPA, US EPA Superfund in Southern California. I'm here today to talk about the Superfund process, where we're at in the Superfund process, and where we are with the proposed listing that was proposed in September of last year. So what is Superfund? Superfund was established in the 1980s to identify, assess, and if necessary, clean up some of the worst contaminated sites in the nation. What is the goal of Superfund? Is, first of all, protect human health and the environment, involve communities and other stakeholders in the process, make responsible parties pay for the cleanup. We take the enforcement first process. And most importantly is get the land back to productive use. It doesn't do any good if it just sits around and lays there contaminated or contaminates even more. What does the Superfund process look like? First, and this is the stage that we're in, is assessing the site whether it meets the qualifications to be included in the national priorities list. If it does qualify, we put it on the national priorities list and then goes into characterization. And we've received a lot of questions. Okay, how far are you going to look out? What contaminants are you going to assess? What is the cleanup level? That is what happens in the characterization. As you know, we have proposed it based on TCE and groundwater, but we will look at other contaminants that were used or processed at the facility. We start at the facility and we work our way out. Till we can't attribute the contamination to the facility or the operations at the facility. We then, once we've assessed the contamination, the extent, then we go into a decision document. How are we going to go about and clean that up? What's the remedy? And that document's called a record of decision. That's where we propose the remedy. We then go into design and cleanup, and ultimately post cleanup, which could be operation and maintenance, where we keep continuing to assess the site while cleanup is going on, or finally delisting the site. So where we're at right now, as most of you know, we proposed the Exide site in September 4th, 2024. We went out for a 60-day comment period. We extended that comment period another 30 days and closed the comment period. From this chart, you can see that's where we are in kind of the off-color yellow, is EPA is assessing all those comments. We did receive 35 comments. 33 were in favor of the proposed listing. 2 sets were in opposition. And the important part about the comments is we have to look at every comment. We have to respond to every comment. And we have to assess that information that's provided in that comment, whether it could have a bearing on the site's ability to continue to qualify to be listed. So like I said, 2 of the comments that we received in opposition were significantly technical, and the comment said that we didn't address certain parts of our listing. So we have generated a technical memo that addresses those comments, and we will be issuing that for public comment this spring. And what it will come out in the Federal Register. It'll be publicly available for comment, and we call that a NOTA, or a Notice of Data Availability. What it means is we have data or analysis that wasn't available when we did the proposed listing. So we want the public to be able to comment on that, review it, and provide us comments. Once we receive those comments, we'll assess those like we did the original set of comments and make sure there's no bearing on the scoring, which is the listing qualifications. If it continues to qualify, we will put it on the NPL list, or the EPA will make a decision to put it on the NPL list. Just to kind of summarize the timeline of where we've been since 2022. In 2022, state of California asked us to propose the site. Since then, we have evaluated it. We assessed soil, we assessed groundwater using many of the data that DTSC had collected, which saved us time. We released a site inspection report. Then we also, we got state concurrence and entered into the 60-day comment period. So like I said, where we're at now is we're about to release the notice of data availability, which will be the release of the technical memo that addresses the two opposing comments. If the site continues to qualify, we anticipate a 2025 listing, but that we will have to make that decision after we evaluate the comments that we receive in the next comment period. And I'll open it up for questions.
Nice. All righty. Well, thank you again, Mr. Polinelli. We'll now open it up for the clarifying questions and comments section. Again, please remember that you will be given 2 minutes to allow everyone an opportunity to speak. There are various ways you can make a comment or ask a question this evening in person by raising your hand. When chosen, one of our staff members will bring a mic to you. If you are participating on Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. You will be invited to unmute your audio, and when it's your turn to speak, again, please, you can make your question or comment. If you're on your phone, you can press *9 to join the phone queue. We will read the last 3 digits of your phone number, and you will be able to press *6 to unmute your line. And if you called in our Spanish bridge line, if you would like to ask a question or comment, please let the translator know, and they can translate your question for you. So now we'll transition to our in-person questions. Is there anybody here with a question or a comment? If you got a hand up from the front, so we'll come to you with a mic shortly. And then we'll go to the back of the room. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amba Rivera. I'm the researcher at Communities for a Better Environment. Given the executive orders and some offices no longer exist, like environmental justice, I'm curious, what's the likelihood of Exide being on the MPO list? And let's say if it is, will there be sufficient funding to clean up the site? Those are my 2 questions.
Sorry, what was the first question? I heard about offices being eliminated, but I didn't hear what that.
So given that some executive orders have shut down certain office, like the one, like environmental justice, does that have any impact on the likelihood of it being on the NPL list? And then the other one is, if it is accepted on the NPL, is there enough funding for that?
So to the first question is, I mean, right now, our community involvement is super fun. One example is me being here, keeping the community updated on where we are with the listing process. That's a statutory requirement of Superfund. So that is something that we are obligated, and actually, I mean, this is a part of every step of the way in the diagram, whether it's selecting the remedy, it's public comment, we go out to public comment. So, we are committed to continuing this process. We will evaluate it. We're following the science. So right now, like I said, once we get public comment on the NOTA, we will assess it. We'll make sure there's no additional information that we have to consider before making a decision. But the issuance of the NOTA is actually because we have to characterize the site, and I can say this.
But it's who's recording me? It's maybe a request or something, but we've seen this administration act in ways that are not in accordance with law. Statutory things should happen, but at some point, if they don't happen that way, it's going to require us to take action in multiple forms. And so the request would just be communication. Like if there is something irregular happening, for us to be made aware of that so we can better prepare ourselves to respond accordingly.
Okay, thank you. The answer to your first question is there has not been a rulemaking this year which would add a site or propose a site to the national priorities list. September 2024, which when Exide was proposed, I believe there was 3 other sites that were proposed as well. But because there hasn't been a final a rulemaking this year, it doesn't have a bearing on Exide's being final listed. Each site is evaluated independently. It's scored independently. The decision to list it or not to list it is based on science. It's based on its qualifications, based on the NPL process. So hopefully that answers your question. And absolutely, from a communication standpoint, that's why I'm here. We have a community involvement coordinator already assigned. I have RPMs that are assigned. We meet with the state, Mehdi and his team. At least monthly, we go over the data that they're collecting. We look at their conceptual site model. We are really up to speed on the site because if the decision is to list the site, we want to make sure we're moving forward. That is a priority of this administration. At least from Administrator Zeldin and Regional Administrator Cook, is protecting communities, clean air, water, and soil. That's in Administrator Zeldin's first tier. So we are continuing down the Superfund process. And again, the issuance of the NOTA is us moving forward.
Great. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the response. We have another hand up.
Thank you. Hello. Sorry, I just got my blood drawn. I have a phobia of needles. I am back though. One thing I wanted to ask was, what comes to mind is when we were doing work around like the U-Haul site and potential NPL listing, and a lot of what we inform members with the timeline and share the DTSC like updates and PowerPoints. I'm reflecting on that, and one big thing I noticed was they were super disappointed to just hear like, it doesn't qualify, and then okay, bye. And now we're gonna pass this over to like the other people who need to jump in. So when it comes to Exide, I feel like a lot of members are like expecting it to be on the NPL, right? But if for some reason it's not, part of what I'm thinking is sometimes it's hard to explain to them why that's the case. To them, it's just obvious, like it should be. What does it take to be put on the NPL when we're dealing with years of contamination, extreme high levels of lead, other chemicals as well? So I think what comes to mind for me, again, is besides these meetings, which I think shout out to the members who can be here today. I know folks have jobs and like have to babysit and have homework. Sometimes it's a little hard for youth members to come, even our adult members here today. I also just want to like extend the invitation beyond these DTSC sessions and meetings. We have our own youth and adult meetings on our end. So it would be super cool to, invite y'all directly to give these updates to membership and allow them to ask you questions directly in their own spaces too. So, if y'all can meet us where we're at, I think that can also be a good way, for us to not be the in-between people to members, but let them directly hear and ask those tough questions that we don't always have the answers to. But, we can coordinate. I see the time check. Thank you. That is all.
No, I would be happy to have any part of our team present. We've been out to your office a couple of times. I've given Jennifer a few briefings. I've been giving you a briefing, but yeah, I would be happy to come to your youth group and let them ask questions from a technical basis. Go through the NPL listing process and what does it take to score an NPL site and how it's evaluated. Like I said, we're going to continue to review these comments that come in, and then that will be the basis for our decision.
Great. Well, thank you both. We'll open up to the room. We do have a hand up at the end of the room. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chip, for your presentation and for all the clarification you're providing. My question is about public comment review peer opportunity. So whenever this next period will happen, it'll be the second time there was a public comment review opportunity. Is there going to be more of them? And or is there something that could happen that would trigger yet another public review or comment opportunity in the process?
Yeah, you are correct. This is the second. The first was in September through December, the 90 days based on the proposed listing, and that was in the Federal Register. The NOTA, or the Notice of Data Availability, it doesn't go outside our process. Not always do we do a NOTA. Sometimes the public comments doesn't introduce any data or anything, a new analysis that we have to do. In this case, the comments that we received were extremely technical and it asked us to evaluate certain things. We did that evaluation, and then we want to make that available. I can't really speak to whether there will be another one. I think we have to wait and see what the comments are, and whether a second round or more data, if more data becomes available. And that's where I say is we continue to review the comments and make the evaluation, whether it has an impact on the original score or how we make that decision. So let's wait and see what the comments are. And I think I will keep you updated on that process.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the response. I think we have time for one more question. And so I do have a hand up here at the front.
Hi, I didn't introduce myself last time. So hi, I'm Eliza. I'm a member with Communities for a Better Environment, but also an organizer with Inner City Struggle. We're an organization in Boyle Heights in East LA. My question was regarding the budget. So I know that well, I guess my question was, has there been an attempt to also ask the cities that have been affected to allocate a small portion of their own city budget to, do the cleanup? And if there has it just been because the cities have been non-cooperative? I know that like DTSC mentioned, at least with I'm assuming it's going to be CD 14. But I'm also asking as like a constituent here in Sella, if that is a possibility, if for example, funding is not available from a state level.
Mehdi, yeah, I can answer from a federal standpoint, but I'll let Mehdi, since you guys are actively doing the cleanup, if you could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're talking about the residential cleanup, right? Yeah. Well, right now the state has taken that burden. And like I said earlier, we're going to try to share with you maybe on the next meeting where we are with our budget. I think we have done it in the past. I can tell you that SB 158, which is the latest funding that we received, had $291 million exclusively for the residential cleanup. And we're almost at the end of that funding. We haven't received any help from the cities other than the help that we are getting right now with the permits. Some cities have been extremely helpful. I can tell you, for instance, that the County of LA for the parkways has been more than accommodating. We've had an immediate access to these parkways and started the work. Some wanted certain conditions attached to the permit. And lastly, I mentioned the City of LA. That's the one that Mark is working with right now. They are putting a plan behind us. They agree for us stepping in, cleaning the parkways, and for the city to come behind and plant trees. So that's where we are at this point.
And from a federal level, it's still early because we're not doing any cleanup. We haven't determined a remedy. We haven't determined an extent. But to go to your question is the cities, and I can tell you the cities surrounding it are asking, or we're briefing them. They're asking for updates on where we are in the proposed listing. Elected officials, both at a state and congressional level and a federal level, we brief them probably once a month or once every other month. So your elected officials are very engaged in working with us, understanding the process and what we need to continue to advance the site. So we've been briefing cities and elected officials.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again for the question. And thank you again for the responses. We're now going to be transitioning to our virtual portion of tonight's meeting.
Just very quickly. Of course, just as a clarification, when I said the city of LA with the trees, that is effectively City 14. That's the part of the city that's helping.
Thank you. All right. So again, we'll be transitioning to our virtual portion of tonight's meeting. Felisa, do we have anyone online with a question or comment?
Hi, Pedro. Before we transition, I just want to acknowledge that we have several ETAG members in the house. Of course, we have Mark Lopez. He's been speaking several times. We also have Rania Sabti in the house, Janet Scully, and Felipe Aguirre, and Pete Reyes. And in addition, online, we have Lisette Rosales from the Office of Mayor Karen Bass and Annette Trejo from LA County First District. So thank you all for joining this evening. Now I'll give it to Felisa.
Thank you.
Okay, Pedro, we do have Rafael Yanis. Please unmute your line and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. So I posted some questions in the Q&A just because I didn't, we didn't get an opportunity to ask questions in the last round. But in any case, to the EPA official there. So I guess the beginning of summer is June 21st. If we have a 30-day comment period, is the idea to have it wrapped up before summer? So that would put the release of the information at around the 21st of this month. Is that an approximate timeline?
If I heard your question right, is the technical memo that EPA has generated in response to two of the significant opposing comments in the form of a notice of data availability. I don't have an exact date, but EPA does anticipate that it will be posted in the Federal Register for public comment, a 30-day public comment within the springtime of this year.
All right. Well, thank you for the question and for the response. Felicia, do we have any additional questions from our online attendees?
Yes, we have another question from Jane Williams. Jane, please unmute your line and ask your question.
Okay, good evening again. It's Jane Williams. I'm the Executive Director of California Communities Against Toxics and a ETAG member. And Chip, this question is specifically for you. First of all, can you make sure that the ETAG is on the distribution list for the NODA?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, and then secondly, can you give us any insight? Are those comments that you're referring to in the docket? And can you give us any insight on how best we can support EPA during the public comment period on the NODA?
The first answer is yes. The slides, which are
apologies.
I feel like I'm at an Academy Award here, and then so yeah. So Jane, yeah, the comments are on the docket. There's a link on the last slide, as well. As you already have my contact information, but yes, they're available. How you could support is submit your comments in, whatever it is, in opposition or in favor of us moving forward with the listing, any of the information that you read in the technical memorandum that you'd like to support or have questions on. It's completely open. So I think that's the best way, is to read the technical memorandum. And if you have input that you'd like us to consider, please submit it.
All right, well, thank you for the response and for the question as well. And thank you to our online attendees for the comments and questions. We're going to now transition into our Spanish Bridge line. Eric, are there any attendees on the Spanish Bridge line? Doesn't look like there are, so thank you again. All right, everyone, that concludes our presentations for this evening. We will now be transitioning to thank our presenters for tonight's updates and information. Stephen Hariri, Branch Chief at DTSC. Dr. Jim Wells, Contract Manager at LEA Environmental. Edwin Chip Polinelli, Assistant Director at USCPA, Region 9. Thank you very much. And additionally, we would like to thank our Spanish translators for their interpretation services this evening. I'll pass it back to my colleague, Freddie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Pedro. We have included contact information for DTSC and supporting agencies to the Exide Residential Cleanup Project. This information will be posted on our chat as well. The DTSC Exide Cleanup Project hotline information, the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health blood lead screening hotline information, the Cal OSHA Workplace Complaint hotline information, and the Air Quality Management District information. Community members that would like to ask additional questions or report issues or leave comments relating to the Exide cleanup effort, please use the Exide feedback management system, which can be accessed via the direct link at feedback.exide.dtsc.ca.gov, or you can simply scan the QR code on the screen with your smart device. Okay, so this concludes our Exide Public Hybrid meeting for this evening. We thank you all and community members in person and online for joining us tonight. Please welcome back Chief Deputy Director Craig Scholler, who will be providing us with closing remarks.
Yeah, I'll do those from here because I'm going to make them very short because I know this was a long evening. I just want to say thank you again for everybody for coming and providing your comments and questions. I think all of these questions and comments help us improve the way we move forward with this project and as well as communicate with all of you. So thank you very much and please get home safely.
Thank you, Chief Deputy Director. Once again, we thank New Start Housing for their continued support and hosting our meeting this evening. We want to thank the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health for providing free blood testing. Thank you all for joining us in person, via phone, and virtually on Zoom. The online meeting will remain open for 2 minutes to allow participants to copy the information from the chat. DTSC is closing this meeting in honor of Juana Beatriz Gutierrez. Everyone, please get home safe and have a great evening.